There's a saying, and I think you're acquainted with it, but you fill it in if you are acquainted. Nature hates a vacuum. What that means in real terms is that there is no such thing as nothingness. There is no such thing as emptiness. That's what I was trying to read from John chapter 1. Before there was anything, there was God. And God is not nothing. Something has always existed, and that something is God. So there is no place that there is no God. That's Bible. Doesn't matter how far you go in any direction, you'll find God. We're approaching a change in the universal heavenly government. This planet and our forefathers experienced a change in government about 6,000 years ago. Evidently, it only takes one or two persons to have a government. There was God in heaven and His Son. That's a government. And in the creation week on this rock, there was Adam, and then there was Eve. That's a government. And governments exist to explain, enforce, and participate in rules and regulations. Now, government can get out of hand. Do I need to say that again? I am being deluged with articles and papers and speeches that are coming from all over the world about how governments have gotten, when I was a child, the expression would have been too big for their britches. They have decided that they own everything, including you, including your private mail, including your private property, including. They have taken unto themselves unlawful, unreasonable power. Well, we're approaching the end of a great struggle that started way back there in heaven.
Hallelujah.
And we see the enemy reaching out to strangle anyone, any opposition, anyone who doesn't want to give him total authority and total rule. And we're watching this happen so fast, it's just mind-blowing to see what's taking place and how quickly it's taking place. The Constitution of this nation, which made this nation the greatest nation in the history of mankind, guaranteed my right to speak my mind. Yes or no?
Yes.
It's called freedom of speech. It also guarantees people who don't agree with me their right to express their own opinions. In recent weeks and months in this country, we have decided that the Constitution doesn't allow that. It allows those who disagree with my Christianity to speak their minds, but I cannot speak my conviction. It's called what?
Hate speech.
Hate speech. Now, this is how you take a government and twist and turn it and bend it to your satisfaction. And of course, you and I see trouble coming. I don't think any of us have even an inkling of an idea about how deep this trouble is going to get to be.
I have an anchor in that, mate.
Between here and Jemison, there are 2 or 3 new signs on the side of the road. Rough road ahead. That's what it says. I didn't know they could write that much in Jemison. Write that clearly. I mean, some of us have been living here for 40 plus years and we've endured potholes aplenty and no one ever said rough road ahead.
That's not it.
Now, we're very thankful for the new, not as rough road, just down the way here. Now, how long it's going to stay not as rough, I don't know, but that's neither here nor there.
They're not finished with it.
I said a few moments ago, nature hates a vacuum. We have, in the history of the United States of America, a unique history unlike any nation that has ever come before. And as far in earthly terms is concerned, there will never be another nation to take the place of this one. Now, there are others who are going to rise after this one. They're going to wish and try and claim to be number one. But they can never match the oneness, uniqueness of the United States of America. They cannot. The difficulty is, few people understand what made the nation great. And there are zillions of opinions about how to make it a greater nation. Homosexual marriage will make this a greater nation. And that is not the opinion of a few anymore. That is the opinion of millions. There is something about the history of this powerful nation, this rich nation, this God-blessed nation. Did God single us out? I'm not real sure on that one. But I believe we prospered as a nation and as a people when we tried to stay within the rules and regulations contained in the book. For example, Jesus said, if you have an enemy, bless him, feed him, do good to your enemies. Can you turn anywhere in the pages of history and find the number one, the power of the day, who said, we've got to defeat the Germans and we've got to defeat the Japanese, but as soon as we get them to stop bombing, shooting, killing, murdering, we're going to feed them and we're going to... It's the Jesus plan is what it is. And we prospered. We were blessed as a people. We reached the zenith of our greatness in the 20, 30, 40 years following that terrible World War II. But in more recent times, we have decided we cannot have the Ten Commandments on the wall of the courthouse. Are you listening? Because someone will be offended. Well, I'm offended that someone would be offended. But my offendedness doesn't count anymore. Are you listening? So I think in this little gathering here this morning, we're agreed that trouble is on the way. There's going to be an explosion. There's going to be an implosion, an explosion, a plosion. There's going to be. You cannot have good and evil in a face-to-face confrontation without an explosion. You can't. Well, there's something else that I really want to focus on for a few moments. And it's the ire. It is the evil desire of Satan and his forces to bring this country down. Why? Well, there are several reasons. First is, this is the last bastion of Protestantism on the planet. Why does that matter? Because prophetically and historically, Catholicism is going to rise in power. It's going to be ascendant. And it takes a Protestant view of Scripture and the world to understand that this nation became great because it put an ocean between us and kings and popes. Kings and popes want to do what besides tax you? They want to control you. And they did for hundreds and even thousands of years. And so men got on their rickety little boats and crossed a great ocean to come here to a free land. Nature hates a vacuum. The United States of America has brought about freedom for millions of people. Just think where you and I would be today if Germany had won the war. Or if Japan had won the war. You Aussies would have been in serious trouble. You understand? God reaches down to imperfect people and imperfect governments and imperfect nations to accomplish His purposes. Daniel said to King Nebuchadnezzar, and Nebuchadnezzar was a pagan, heathen king. And what had he done? Surrounded God's city of Jerusalem and tore it down and destroyed Solomon's glorious temple and took away to Babylon all the vessels of the temple and made slaves out of God's people. I don't think God should have favored Nebuchadnezzar at all. But He did. He did. And He says through His own prophets that I am not a respecter of persons. If Babylon committed acts that were contrary to the will and purpose of God, payday would come. And for Babylon, payday came when Belshazzar was the last king. Are you listening? I want to compare ancient Babylon with modern Babylon, which I believe the United States of America holds that place. Are we in the days of Nebuchadnezzar or are we in the days of Belshazzar? That's a real interesting question. You may want to give that more than a little bit of thought. Both were pagan heathen kings. What was the difference? How could Nebuchadnezzar get by with it and Belshazzar couldn't? And by the way, what did they get by with until? I think we ought to rehearse that for just 2 or 3 minutes. Nebuchadnezzar broke down God's city, broke down God's temple, took the treasures of God's house away. But where were they placed? They were placed in the vault, and they were not used. Belshazzar, with a whole lot of wine running around, decided he was going to make a very special effort to impress his guests, who were also full of wine. You listening? And he sent word to do what? Bring the golden vessels and let my guests drink from the golden vessels. There is something about that act that caught the attention of heaven. More so than breaking down the walls, breaking down the temple, taking God's people away captive. There was something about this act of drunkenness that flew in the face of God. You listening?
Toasted other gods.
Now, because I spent a great deal of my early life around people drinking, persons drinking, I have seen occasions when people were so drunk they literally could not stand up. But something would happen. Something would happen. and they would be almost instantly sober. Tell me what it was that instantaneously sobered a whole room full of drunks. It wasn't just a hand. It was a bloodless hand appeared writing on the wall. Would that get your attention? And of course, no one in the room knew what was being written. Well, who do you send for? The Jews. Because they seemed to have a connection with the gods. Daniel was an old man by this time. And he's summoned. And he is commanded by the king to read the handwriting on the wall. Tell me what it says without looking it up. You, that's you singular, O king, and that's you plural, Babylonian elitists. You are weighed in the balances and found this day is your kingdom taken from you and given to another. Is there any indication prophetically that we are on that road? I don't know exactly what act will be committed by this nation, because right now there are so many, we have turned our back on Israel. The Bible says plainly you can't do that. You can't do that. Whoever blesses you, I will bless. And whoever curses you, what? I will curse. You cannot go against a plain thus saith the Lord. That's my understanding. I'm talking about from personal study. It's my understanding that the great sins that are going to be committed by the abomination that will make desolate will be a rewrite of God's law. I know it says the seventh day, but I think the first day is better. In Daniel chapter 7 it says he will think to change the moed, the times and laws. Is there any indication that we are rewriting Scripture in this country today? Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And proud of it. If I were not a student of history, if I didn't know history and the Bible, but because I do, I want to tell you this is frightening. Not that many years ago, Billy Graham said, we've gone too far. We hadn't seen anything yet. You're able to look and see there is a way, and if you continue in this way, there's destruction ahead. The destruction that's ahead for America, for the United States of America, has to do with a process of humbling and bringing this nation down. Are we seeing this happen? Come on. Is the world watching it take place? When Germany surrendered, the Russians took over half of the country and half of
East Berlin.
Berlin. All right? And the Russians hated the Germans for what they did to them. And I can understand it. It's you can't even put it into words. And they decided they were not going to allow the part of Berlin that they were in control of to get any more food. We'll just starve you out. We'll give you a taste of starvation. St. Petersburg, over 1 million people starved to death in 2.5 years. That was in one city of Russia. Well, we're going to give you equal pay. Now, the United States got involved in this. No one said from this side, as far as I have ever read and ever studied, no one said they don't deserve it. But they said we cannot remain humane people. We cannot remain people if we behave the way they behaved. And Russia said, well, tough luck. We are not going to allow you to bring any more food across. As a matter of fact, they wanted to completely cut off Berlin from the rest of the world. And they literally wanted to starve these people to death. Now today we have Russia in the picture again. Airplanes, guns, soldiers. And we who said, okay, we're going to fly our own planes, our own transports. We're going to fly them full of food. We're not going to fly bombers, and we're not going to fly fighters, and we're not going to take guns aboard. We're going to take food on board. And we're going to fly in, and let's see if you're just brash enough and foolish enough to start shooting down our planes. You listening? You and I are watching in the last 24 months the President of the United States say, we're drawing a line in the sand, and if you cross this line, you will be sorry. They crossed the line. And more than 200,000 people in Syria have been murdered as a consequence of crossing the line. We have turned our back on one of our strongest allies anywhere on the planet. We have said, you cannot, to Congress, to our own Congress, you cannot invite Benjamin Netanyahu over to speak to Congress. And Congress showed a little bit of gutsiness and they invited him over. But they didn't invite Netanyahu to the White House. But the same government invited the Pope, not only to Congress, but to the White House. Are you listening? We have decided who will be our friend and who will not be our friend. And we are no longer going to be friends with the Israelis. The die is cast. The die is cast. Where will this take us? Come on, there's one word.
War.
No, one word used one time in the Bible. It's called Armageddon. The die is cast. So if I ask you, what one thing made the United States of America the most powerful nation in history, what would you say? Bombs? Guns? What would you say?
Protestants.
What? Well, in the spiritual realm it would be, but in the physical, real world, where has our power been centered for almost 150 plus years? Come on. It's called wealth. 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 How many automobiles can you buy with no money? How many planes can you fly with no money? The world is watching this nation come to pieces in a very brief period of time. It is literally coming apart at the moral seams, the financial seams. It's coming to pieces. And I cannot help but see and say it's by design. Who is behind it all? Who's behind the Vatican? Who is behind all of this? So Nebuchadnezzar said, I had a dream and it troubled me. And I want all the wise men, soothsayers, magicians, and astrologers to come in, and they need to give me answers. And of course, they had no answers. God saw to that. When Daniel was finally brought before King Nebuchadnezzar, he said, I need time with my friends to pray and ask the God of heaven for answers. So they prayed. And this is what Daniel said to the king. There is a God in heaven that ruleth over all. There is a God in heaven. How much credit did he take to himself? In the telling of the dream, this is what he said. God has shown the king what shall be in the latter days. And God is going to remove kings and set up kings. Is it possible in your thinking, can you get this far? Is it possible in your thinking that God has made this nation in the past a great, powerful people and nation and government, but when we have gone to drunkenness and wine and using God's vessels, is it possible in your thinking that this is one of the kings or governments that God says, no more? You've gone too far. Now, how is this expressed in the second dream given to the king? Come on, we got there, we need to go again. How is this expressed? You saw, O king, a great tree that filled the whole earth. And all the birds and all the beasts and all the people came and they were fed and nurtured. You're the great tree. But something happened in the king's dream. And a watcher and a holy one in heaven, that means an authoritative voice in heaven said, chop down the tree. Wait a minute. Think of all the birds that need to be fed and all the animals and all the people and all the business that needs to be conducted. Chop down the tree. And how long is the tree going to be in this humbled condition? Come on.
7 years.
7 times they're going to pass over it. 7 times. Now, lest I be misunderstood on this point, I want to tell you that at the end of the 7 years, Nebuchadnezzar was told by Daniel in the dream, and when 7 years have passed over, you will have your mind back. Is it possible in your thinking, is it possible that God is going to bring us down so He can bring us back to sanity? And what will the moment of sanity be? And Nebuchadnezzar says, read it in Daniel chapter 4. Read it at the end of the chapter, the end of the dream. And when the Most High will rule in the heavens. This is the removal of kings, kingdoms, governments down here, and the setting up of a new king and kingdom and government. One that will never what? Pass away. And those very words are expressed in chapter 7 of Daniel. Never pass away. Now, what we're watching, what you and I and the world are watching, seeing, is this nation being humbled step by step by step. Are we in trouble financially?
Big time.
Oh. I'll tell you how old I am. I can remember when they talked about the budget of the United States government in millions of dollars. In more recent years, we went to billions of dollars. What are we talking about today? No. The most recent is quadrillion. All the math that I can handle, I got in the second grade. And I never even heard the word million, billion, trillion, and certainly never heard the word quadrillion. What does all of this mean? Well, I watched Glenn Beck when he was still welcome to the Fox News Network. I watched Glenn Beck, and he was talking today, and he was talking the next day, and he was talking every day that we need bold men and women in Congress to turn this thing around, and we need to pay off all of this debt. So I asked PJ to send an email to Glenn Beck. I said, Glenn, we're never going to pay this debt off. Why not? We can't. We do not produce enough wealth in this country to pay back what we owe, much less keep the game going. So I said, Glenn, give it up. Send a note to Congress and tell them to print more funny money and send me some.
Oh, dear.
It's not funny.
No, I'm sure he
It's not even a little humorous. It is reality. It is reality. So all of this prophetic scenario that's about to be painted with regards to this beast system, this is a government that is being formed, on the way to being formed and announced to the whole world. Beast number one. I get a lot of eyebrows raised when I'm in an Adventist audience and I say, the pioneers didn't have things exactly right with regards to the beast. There's beast number one and there's beast number two. And beast number two is beast number one, but on steroids. Are you listening? It is the first beast that lifts the spirits of the world. Ellen White said it like this, when all are looking forward to many years of worldly prosperity. See? The New Testament says, and when they shall say or cry, peace and what? Yeah, thank you. It doesn't say safety. It does in the King James, but that's not what it says in the Greek. It says, and when they shall cry or say peace and prosperity, there's going to be a change.
Is that going to be the 7 years, you think?
That's going to be the beginning of the 7 years. Yeah. Remember Joseph's dreams? Not Joseph's dreams, Pharaoh's dreams. 7 years of what? And 7 years of what?
7 years of pain.
Yes. We've had the prosperity. We're on the way to 7 miserable years. See, of insanity. The leadership of the country has gone or will go insane. I can't think of a better description of Congress and the White House. The government doesn't work anymore.
Can't do anything.
This is what I'm asking you to see on the board with me. We're on the way to the beast system. It is a crisis that will bring about the circumstances that allow the new world order to come into being. Did you hear the Pope's announcement 2 weeks ago? 1 week ago? that we allow persons and businesses to go bankrupt, we need to consider allowing nations to go bankrupt. This is happening. This is the talk of the day. Beast number 1, we want to refer to as the New World Order. And in order for the New World Order to rise, this government, and Daniel describes in Daniel 7 as, I saw a lion, I saw a bear, I saw a leopard. We all can picture a lion, a bear, and a leopard. But Daniel said this fourth one, he was unlike anything I had ever seen. And whatever authority he is going to either usurp or be granted, he has teeth and nails of iron and brass, it says, and he is stamping. This is the first breath of foul air of the government is going to do what it wants to do and take what it wants to take and defy you or me or anyone else to say a word against it. It is this beast that, according to the very text, it is this beast that receives the deadly wound. Now, our forefathers, they had it all back hundreds of years ago and 1,260 years ago and on and on and on and on. No. This is the beast that is rearing its ugly head right now. Some crisis is about to take place in the financial markets. And something has to be done to try and save the day. I could read pages and pages and pages that have been across the wires this week. I believe that they're going to find a way of kicking the can down the road. For those who understand what the GCR, Global Currency Reset, means, I believe that's what is about to take place. And the one world government, which is forming, is the one that is going to declare this reset. And the Pope is hinting at it to all the leaders of the world and all the people of the world that we need a reset. Call it bankruptcy, call it whatever you want, but we need to wipe out debt. Now, how do you wipe out debt without wiping out people who have spent their whole lives saving enough to retire? How do you wipe out debt without wiping out people? Well, it has been decided that there's only a few who have money. And there are many who do not, and therefore we reserve the right to take all their money. Have you lived long enough to understand anything at all about human nature? Do you understand that you could take all the money on this planet, spread it out, give everybody on the planet the same amount of money, and how long would it be till it was all back in the same hands again?
Not long.
Why is that? Oh, because they're all crooked. No, because that's human nature. There are people who will take their food stamps intended to give them and their families nourishing food, and who will go and get Cokes and cigarettes and potato chips. And are you listening? It's human nature. There are no human solutions to where we are and where we're going. There are only heavenly God solutions. And God is going to allow this government time to sport its stuff, show its true character. Beast number 1 is the same beast over here, except this one is dealt a deadly wound. It says in the Greek, I saw one of his heads, it was wounded unto death. But The deadly wound was healed, and all the world was what? Amazed, stood in amazement, because they thought this was all over and gone. What could possibly breathe new life into this beast? This beast. What could possibly breathe new life? It's called the wealth of the Vatican. The Vatican is going to step up, throw open its doors to its vaults and say, we have gold and we will back the plan. And by the way, you don't have to take the gold out of the vault. Everybody can see we have the gold. That's all that's necessary. Are you listening? Can you think of a smarter way to do business? You still own the gold. You still possess the gold. You still have the gold, but you get all the credit. This is where we're going. This is the same beast. It's called in Revelation 13 an image to the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. Now this is what I want you to see. All of this talk is to get you to this point. This beast has 10 horns. This beast has one head. This beast has 10 horns, one head, and by a little horn rises with eyes like a man and a mouth speaking boastful things. You listening? When we meet this beast again in Revelation 13, he still has the 10 horns, but he has 7 heads. Something happened between here and here. Are you listening? What happened between here and here? Well, the clue is right there in Revelation 13. And on his heads were the names of blasphemy. I'll never forget, I was in a very large camp meeting a few years ago. We got to this point in the discussion of the mark of the beast and national Sunday law coming and all of these kinds of things, and people are glued. They're riveted. And I said, there's a change coming. There's a change coming. Are you listening? On his heads the names of blasphemy. I said, blasphemy is what happens in the church house, not the state house. And you could feel the congregation gasp. The pioneers understood that there's a time coming when religion and politics are going to be married, and that's a no-no. That's the old way on the other side of the ocean. That's the old way. But it says, and on his heads the names of blasphemy. Now, how does Paul enlarge on this in his retelling and interpretation of the prophecies? How does Paul say this? The day is coming, this man of sin is going to sit where he ought not. He's going to sit, Paul says, in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. That's a boast too far. That's when you do that, heaven stands up. Michael stands up. You listening? You and I and the world is really right here. We're watching the United States come down, 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 down. You're the head of gold. But after you will come another power. Silver is less than gold. You're gold, but not forever. Chop down the tree. That's a clear indication that you can only be number one for so long, and then bullseye. The wings in Daniel's first vision, the wings of the lion are what? Pulled off. The lion's heart is what? Pulled out. And it says he was made to stand on his feet like a man. That's the same thing that was said about the tree. You're the great tree, O king, but the day is coming you're going to go out and eat grass with the rest of the donkeys. And you're going to lose your mind. Daniel's second vision, this is Daniel chapter 8, uses a little bit of a different imagery, but it's talking about exactly the same thing. Somebody over there, call it the Persian Gulf, call it the Middle East, somebody over there pushes too much, too long, too far. And he angers a power from the West. Boy, the Eskimos don't count. Even the Aussies don't count. You listening? That would be a power from the South. No, this is a power that comes from the West. And this power comes evidently across water. He touches not the ground as he comes. And that leaves water and air. And we're prepared to handle business. There is this ram with two horns, and Gabriel says, look, you don't have to guess at this. This is about the last days, and this is about the Medes and the Persians. It's called Iraq and Iran. I mean, I didn't make that up. And we had a meeting in Sydney, Australia, and I ventured that far, and a notable person shouted out loud, "This man has lost his mind." This one troubles me. This one scares the daylights out of me. This one does not rule or control the whole world. It does not say that in the vision. But when this one rears his ugly head, when power is given to this beast to be resurrected and rear his ugly head, and he causeth the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. And how much of the world? All the world wondered or followed the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. And this one we call the one world order. You'll want to talk to Paul in the New Testament about he's going to sit in the temple of God. Now that limits space. The time is already, in the context of the end, he is going to sit in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. That's the bold, brash little horn of prophecy. There's nothing, you and I, we do not represent a large group of people. There's nothing you and I can do to keep this beast from rising. We can state an objection or objections, but we are not going to stop this beast from rising. Why not? Because how much of the world is headed for bankruptcy? Come on, how much? Who taught the rest of the world how to create money out of nothing and debt? We taught everybody else on the rock how to do this. Now they want to know how to get out from under it. And so this is what's being decided. Listen, don't miss it. What is being decided is the rest of the world is throwing us under the bus. They have decided You made your bed, now you sleep in it, and we're going to go and create a whole new currency, a whole new government, a whole new World Bank, we're going to leave you to your own just deserts. In less than 90 days ago, Germany voted for China and Russia. Japan voted for China and Russia. Great Britain voted for China and Russia. Are you listening? These are the people we saved. These are the people we bailed out. What are you doing turning your back on us? If we turn our backs on God's people, then our just deserts are to have our so-called friends turn their backs on us. This is the wealth. This is the power. This is. And I need to change the tense and say this was. Because this is what sets in motion the dreams and the visions in Daniel and Revelation. It is the vacuum that is being created by the power of this power being broken. And you and I are watching it. You and I are experiencing it. I'm not one of these people who goes in the grocery store and I take a calculator with me and I just for most of my life I rely on, I've got a pretty good memory. And I know what this costs. And I know what this costs. I've been buying it a long time. I like it. Now this one item went from $1 to $1.25 in 1 week. Now how much increase is that? Come on, 25% in 1 week. And I'm saying, they charged the wrong price. Jesus says, that's the price. Now here's another one, 72 cents. Guess what it went to? $4.20. Now they had to correct it in the next 2 or 3 weeks. What I'm trying to tell you is the reality that is just before all of us is that we will not be able to afford to live. Which is exactly the plan and the purpose behind all of this. Is you can't afford to live, but we're going to take care of you if you go along with the plan. Now, I am so thankful that history and prophecy reveal that a great nation, a moral people like America, we will never give in. We will stand for principle. That is not what the Bible reveals, and that is not what Ellen White was shown. This, I'm quoting, this nation will be foremost. What's another word for foremost?
First.
Thank you. This nation will be foremost in stretching her hand across the Gulf. That's the Atlantic. That's the big pond. Foremost in stretching her hand across the Gulf to clasp the hand of Romanism in the old world. This nation will yet, listen, repudiate every principle of her Constitution and Republican, and that's not Republican Party, that's a Republican form of government. Mm-hmm. The things that have made us and kept us free, we're giving up. They're being taken away from us. This is the vacuum that concerns me, right here. This vacuum is right now. Why does this concern me? Well, we want to print millions of books, and we want to use the postal services of this country and others to mail a publication, a present truth, I'm quoting Ellen White, a present truth publication. We want to mail a present truth publication to every residential address in the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, you name it. We want to get Great Britain. We want to get the Caribbean. We want to get, because we are ready, English, Spanish, French, we're ready. What do we lack?
Money.
And every day that we don't do it, the cost is what? Oh, it's going down. The cost is going down. No. The cost is going up. So this past week, our customer service representative, this is the person through whom we work to print our books. He makes the arrangements on, well, this press will do a better job for you than that press. He's our customer service representative. I said to him, and I called him by name, I said, last time you were here, I don't recall what an individual booklet was costing us. Tony spoke up and he said, about 39 cents. I said, can you tell me what the change that's taking place, where we're going? Start at 60. You listening?
Crazy.
And so I just danced a happy dance, and I said, Lord, this just makes me feel good all over. And what am I watching? I am watching the enemy through human agencies hold back the work. Hold back the work. Hold back the work. And every day he can hold it back, the cost goes what? And sometimes I'm tempted to pray, Lord, have you got your calculator? So we're praying, we're asking God for a lot of money to print a lot of books, cover a lot of territory in a very brief period of time. So this is where I want to take you. This umbrella and this umbrella, I believe, will constitute 7 prophetic years at the end. This one is measured. We can actually count the days in this one. It's 1,260 days. It's 1,290 days. It's 1,335 days. There are 3 events that are going to take place at the end, the end, the end. Count the days. Now this one, we don't have a day count. We don't have a measuring stick. But because we know prophetically this is 7 years sanctuary time. 7 years. We also know from the Bible and history that it's not necessarily 7 years to the day. It can be 6 years and 1 day and still be reckoned in the Bible as 7 years. Very few people understand this. So when you look at this as 3.5 years, this cannot exceed 3.5 years. But if you really look at sanctuary time, and when Jubilee comes, because Jesus is going to return in a Jubilee year, the Jubilee year will be the year. According to Scripture, according to sanctuary time, the instruction is to sound the trumpet of Jubilee throughout the land on the 10th day of the 7th month. That's about 6 1/3 years. You're 5 months short. About 6 1/3 years. If this is 3.5, this is a little less than 3. there is going to be a change in the circulating currency. I'm quoting her. They thought it was all happening back there. No. I was shown it is a device of Satan for the last days. It belongs here. And this is what's about to happen. There's going to be a change in the circulating currency. And what will it affect? She said it's a device of Satan. And it's going to bring great hardship to the poor. No, wait a minute. The poor are already marching in million-man marches because they're hungry, they can't pay rent, they can't pay utilities, they can't find work, they can't. So the stage is set for a crisis. That's going to introduce the world to the new world order, this new government system. But this is not universal. Do you know what the word Catholic means? Universal. That means the whole world. That's a prophetic clue, by the way, in the prophecies. This system, this first one, is not universal. Many of the countries of the world will be part of this. But how many countries of the world will be part of this? So there are 10 horns. One head, but when the resurrected beast is seen, 10 horns and 7 heads, and on those heads the names of blasphemy. This is my take, and we're going to close. It looks to me as though we're going to have a crisis. The plan is to kick the can down the road for the whole world. New world order. It's going to work for at least, I think, a year, maybe a little longer, maybe a little while. And then the great dream is going to be dashed. And another crisis is going to come. And this crisis is going to cause the religious powers. Those 7 heads, I believe, are the 7 great religions of the world that are going to be brought in as voting members of the United Nations. So you have the religions of the world and you have the governments of the world, and how much of the world do you have? All the world. All of the world except for whom? A little people. A remnant. A little people. And they are going to stand, though the heavens fall. They are going to stand against this plan of the enemy to boast he owns the world. And if everyone bows down to him, he owns the world. So someone is going to stand against him, even if they are put to death, even if their lives are threatened unto death. They are going to resist him and stand against him so that Jesus can come and lawfully claim the dominion. Will you and I be part of all of this? To some degree. How much? I can't say. But to some degree, you and I, every day that we're living now, is likely to be measured in here. Likely to be measured. On the 18th, and today is the 20 what? 4th. On the 18th, the new deal with Iran, those are the Persians, took effect. And I have to wonder, are we in the countdown? I have to wonder. Father in heaven, there is so much light in your word, and there's so much darkness in the world. Your servant Peter said, the scriptures are like a light in a dark place. The words of prophecy are like light in a dark place, and they're going to shine more and more until the perfect day arrives, until the perfect one arrives. We have come to such a time as this. There's going to be a testing and a trying. There's going to be a lot of suffering and crying. But your people have been there and been here before. This is the time we've been warned about, we've been counseled against. I just pray that you'll bless every one of us with heavenly courage to stand and be counted. Help us to be wise. We are not to speak out of turn and out of place, but Jesus promised to give us words when this time comes. And I claim the promise of Jesus for each and every one here today. In His name, amen.